as you guys can see that it says live. And then people are able to comment. However,
That's fun.
I'll explain it later. So we'll see when people join, so on and so forth. So,
Yeah, I guess.
hello, Facebook world. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Tuesday today. We are doing another live episode of The Bright Side of Life. This is episode 42. So this is not the one that went out today, but it's going to be one that's coming out in 2 weeks. But I was really excited to talk to Kim and Tara because as you can see, or you can't see, not yet, that these ladies are soulful healers and they do spiritual empowerment coaching. And I just thought that this would be a lot of fun to go live because if you guys have questions, like I have tons of questions for them, you guys can do so. So I'm pretty sure that somewhere on the Facebook thing, you guys can ask questions and I will get that in this little comment section here that they will pop up. So if you guys want to do that, I am happy to answer these questions without kind of like some disruption because this is going to be a podcast, so on and so forth. So, but if you want to let me know in the comments that you guys can hear me and say, yes, we can hear you loud and clear, that would be wonderful. Besides that, Kim and Tara, are you guys good on your end for your TikTok? Awesome. Okay, well then we will go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The Bright Side of Life. I am your host, Melissa Bright, and today I am talking with Kim and Tara, and they are spiritual empowerment coaches, and they have a company called Soulful Healers. So we are going to be talking all things today about spirituality. Now, just a little quick rundown. Kim and Tara first met 8 years ago, and they became fast friends before working together in the educational field. But once COVID hit, they lost their jobs and their identity with it, as we all can really relate to that. So this began their spiritual awakening and continued on a path of self-discovery journey. I can't talk today. So, ladies, thank you so much for being here. How are you guys doing today?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're doing great. We're super excited to share. We love talking all things spirituality, and we love sharing our story too, just in hopes that it reaches people the way that they need to be reached today.
Yes, absolutely. And this is my first time that I've actually had 2 guests on at the same time. So I'm excited for this and we're going to do great. And let's just go ahead and get into it. So I've kind of decided what we're going to do is I'm going to break things down into like Kim sharing a little bit about her story first, then Tara sharing a little bit about her story, how you guys came together, and then how this spiritual journey and then everything kind of started. So that's what's going to happen. Kim, I'm going to kind of read just a little bit of an excerpt that you put on your bio, if you don't mind me. And then so people kind of know where we're coming from, and then we'll go from there.
Sure.
So on this, for Kim, she had put that I repressed traumatic childhood and was living with limiting beliefs and a scarcity mindset. I had lived in a home situation with a father who was unmedicated and mentally ill, suffered from schizophrenic, how do I say that? Affective disorder, and a mother who overworked to avoid the situation at home. My violent, aggressive, chaotic childhood had manifested itself into my adult life where I was working 60 hours a week, unfulfilled, and addicted to a chaotic lifestyle. Through my spiritual journey, I have become fulfilled, living with an abundant mindset, and have found my inner spark and reconnected with my soul. I literally just like pulled that from the thing, obviously, and I didn't change anything. So I was trying to like change it to I, all that fun stuff. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about your childhood. And you said that it was chaotic and your dad was unmedicated. So kind of talk to me about what that looked like when you were a little girl.
Sure. So my dad let me go ahead and backtrack just a little bit. So when we were growing up, we thought that my dad just had manic depressive disorder and maybe a touch of bipolar disorder. At the time, I mean, think about it, like 30 years ago, they really weren't looking at mental health the same way that they were. My dad also has this ability to kind of turn on and off when he is super comfortable around people. He had a tendency to be more aggressive and a tendency to kind of come out of his shell, so to speak. So nobody had ever really interacted. My mom, I guess, really had never interacted with his psychologist or his psychiatrist growing up. And so when we as adult children took my dad finally to the doctor, within a matter of minutes, he was like, you know what, this isn't manic depressive disorder at all. What you're talking about is a disorder called schizoaffective, which is in between schizophrenia and in between bipolar. And it's kind of an unknown disorder that they can't really characterize too much about. But it's kind of like he had paranoid schizophrenia. So growing up as a kid, it was me and my 3 siblings. Like I said, my mom overworked. I mean, my mom was literally working somewhere between 60 to 80 hours a week. She was
Gosh.
And my dad worked the night shift. So during the day, especially like summers and weekends, we were predominantly with him. But he couldn't turn that side of him off with us. And so as kids, it was a typical day for us would be to wake up in the morning, and my dad always slept on the couch. Don't know why, but he did. And we had to kind of be quiet around him because we didn't want to wake him up for the fear of what he was going to be like that day. And so once he eventually got up, the yelling basically started then at that point. He was stuck in this time where chemically, like when you start to have schizophrenia, sometimes there's like an event that triggers it, right? It's dormant in your body, but something triggers it. So my dad's triggering event was crossing a picket line in a union job that he had. And then when he did that, the company, the union, got really aggressive with him, and they threw bricks in our house. They threw bricks in our windows. I mean, my dad had to go.
Oh my God.
He had to go to work in the trunk of his car because people were embarrassed to take him. So like, think about that. Like mentally, of course, a breakdown.
Right.
Too. And so, but he was stuck in that event. That event had happened years and years prior, but that's all that he could talk about. So he would wake up in the morning and just start yelling at us about how nothing that he knows is real, that there are aliens in the wall, that they are watching us, that you have to be careful what you say, be careful what you do, because you don't know who's going to be listening to you. You don't know what they're going to use with that information. So like, think about like 3-year-old little kids, like, oh my God, somebody's listening to us in the walls.
Right. Because you don't know that your dad is necessarily
nothing. Yeah.
Wow.
So there was that portion of it. And then there was a lot of aggressiveness towards his relationship with my mom. So oftentimes as kids, he would kind of come at us and resent us a little bit because he felt like his true love was my mom, and we kind of had ruined that dynamic for him. And so kids, we learned right off the bat that not that my dad didn't love us, but that he did not love us nearly as much as he loved our mom, and was vocal about that. And so it was really tricky because a lot of what he did, I mean, now as an adult, I can see he wasn't in control of any of this, but as a kid, I mean, our reactions were pretty visceral to him. We didn't want him to be around us. We didn't want him to engage in our family in any way, shape, or form. If we had things that we had to do at school, or at the time we were heavily involved at church or whatever it was, we did not want him coming because we didn't know how he was going to react. We didn't know if he was going to be yelling at the top of his lungs about something that happened 18 years ago, right?
Right.
And so eventually it got to the point where I'm going to go with, I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. I started to, and it wasn't just me, my other siblings were the same way. We all thought that my dad was likely going to kill us or my mom, because he got so violent, because he got so aggressive, and he didn't really care if we were upset or if we were sick or even if my mom would ask him to stop, he didn't care. He couldn't stop. And so I started sleeping in my mom's bed with her when I was like probably 5 or 6, because even in my little body, I thought that I could protect her in some way.
Sure.
And so I like one night specifically, I can remember my dad, he worked that night shift. So he would come in, I guess it's like second shift. I don't know what it is. He would come home at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know shifts either. It's fine.
Yeah, sometimes like 1 o'clock, sometimes midnight. It just depends upon the job that he was on.
Yeah.
And he came home and he would do this all the time. We were little and he would wake us up in the middle of the night screaming because he had just gotten off of work. He had all this adrenaline and he needed to get all of this off his chest. And so he pulled the pillow out from underneath. He like slyly walked into my mom's room. And I don't know why, but I was awake and I was just watching him. And he walked around my mom's bed and grabbed a pillow out from underneath her head and went to go put it over her head. And I just started screaming at the top of my lungs because, you know,
right.
you're a kid in the room and you're pretty sure you're going to watch your dad murder your mom. And thankfully she woke up. But then it ensued this actual fight. And my dad never hit my mom, but he would like chest bump her and like push her into walls and push her into doors and whatnot. And so we all started getting very scared. And my siblings, we all ranged, there's a range of 8 years between the 4 of us.
Okay.
And so that night specifically, it got bad enough to the point where it was like 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my mom was like, the kids have to go to school in the morning. Like, you have to stop. You've been yelling for 2 hours. And we ended up packing up and getting in my car and my mom's car and driving to my aunt's house and spending the rest of the night at my aunt's house. And then like, this is the kicker about our family is, especially at that time, you know, we were taught not to talk about our feelings, not to talk about our experiences, and to assume everything's fine. So the notion was things are going to be shitty at home, but pretend that it didn't happen. So we had that experience, you know, screaming, yelling, the whole thing, watching all of that happen, driving over to my aunt's house, waking up, and then going right back to school and acting like nothing ever happened. And so that was pretty much my childhood. That was consistent all the time. There were times, I mean, this is terribly sad when you think about it now, but like I learned as a kid, the way that my bedroom was set up was that if I put a folding door underneath my door handle, when my dad would open the door, he would open the folding chair and the folding chair would hit the wall. So he couldn't actually physically come in my room, but he could still yell, but he couldn't be in my room yelling. Right. And so I learned to start doing that so that at least I could try to sleep over the yelling. At least it wasn't right next to my face. At least it wasn't right, you know, that kind of deal. Yeah. And so, so, I mean, it was definitely not a typical childhood.
No.
And so I think I grew up hiding everything about myself. I learned right at the beginning. I watched, at least from a child's eyes, I watched all these other families seemingly have typical families, right? Mm-hmm. And I learned from that age that I wasn't enough, because if I was enough, I would have had this normal dad. I would have had this normal relationship and my family would be happy-go-lucky like everybody else.
Right.
And so I internalized that there was something wrong with me, that I was not worthy enough of having a family like this. And that truly that I was just meant to suffer. That's like the number one thing that I learned, that I was meant to suffer. That was the lifetime I was choosing to live. Like, this is exactly how it was going to be. I'm always going to have a difficult time because I always had a difficult time as a child.
Right.
And so I carried that belief with me through young adulthood, through even, I mean, up until recently, to be honest. It was something that I had to like really sit with myself and recognize that was not real, you know. But until you become conscious of it and until you become aware that these are the beliefs that you created because of your experiences, you can't start to address them and break them, right? And change them and rewire them to what really fits you.
Sure.
So I mean, my family was nothing. It was not normal. Not that there is a normal, but
this really was not normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Normal. And so it really was just learning to hide myself, right? I wasn't allowed to share what was going on at home. I knew that it was shameful. At least that's how I perceived it. And so I carried this shame with me as if it was my fault, right? As if this was, oh my gosh, I can't let anybody know because people would be mortified that this was what's going on. But secretly, as a kid, I also can remember staring at teachers just thinking, oh my God, will one of them ask me if everything's okay? Would somebody just ask?
Right.
Because I would have totally
Said something. Right.
as an adult, my parents ended up not getting divorced until I was in my, oh gosh, I think I was like 22, maybe 23, something like that. And so the minute that I could get out of my house, I did. I went to college and did all 4 years there. And then as soon as that was done, I even rented a house in that area for another year because I could not go back to my house.
Yeah.
And then I had no choice but to go back to my house because I tore my ACL and I needed help, like actually recovering.
Right.
Surgery. And I ended up staying there for a year. And in that year, I called the police 3 different times on my dad because I was like, it's not acceptable. Like there is a point where, as a child, I had to deal with your aggressiveness. I had to deal with you throwing stuff all around the house. And
you can say cuss words. We cuss on this podcast. It's fine.
Like I had to deal with him like throwing shit and ruining stuff and ruining and life in general. And so he occasionally hit us, not crazy, but enough to where it wasn't okay. And as a 22 or 23-year-old, when he hit me, I was like, get out of here. This isn't happening. So I called the police a couple different times. And at the third time I called the police, they were like, there's literally nothing we can do other than if he gets more aggressive, we can remove him from the home for like 24 hours. But that's all that like really happens.
Right.
And so my mom finally decided to get a divorce at that point. And to be honest, her lawyer was like, don't call the police anymore because somebody's going to end up being responsible for him. Like they're going to deem him like he can't be cared for. And it was just this chaotic hot mess. And so now here we are another 10 years later. Truth be told, while my dad is in a home now, he's had many strokes and he's had many issues. So he's now in a home.
Yeah.
It's me and my siblings that are responsible for him. So we take care of him. We maneuver all of his bills, all of his paperwork, all the medical. I mean, all of that ends up on us now at this point. Right. So I think like the way that life has gone for me is so full circle because 10 years ago, there is no way in hell I would have been doing this. There is no way that I would have helped him get out of a house, that I would have helped him get into a home and taken care of him and sat at his bedside when he was in a hospital. I would have never done that.
Right.
And as crazy as this sounds, I know this sounds crazy, I'm grateful for how it happened. I realize now that it had to happen that way because I had to have these experiences to relate to other people, to have such an empathetic standpoint, and to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Like we really, truly don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And I'm a perfect example of that. For somebody who's an open book 90% of the time, I didn't even feel comfortable telling anybody about my home life until maybe 3 years ago.
Right. So, yeah. So I have a couple of follow-up questions with your story. So I know that you said you grew up in a chaotic life. How did that transfer that chaos into your adulthood in terms of like the way that you lived or the way that you acted or stuff like that? Because this is something that is new to me that my boyfriend has kind of brought up because I did grow up in a little bit of a chaotic life, childhood. I moved 13 times before I even went to high school, went to 13 different schools, and I didn't think of chaos. And then he sometimes said, he's like, I think you thrive on chaos. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no way. And then one time, and I'll kind of tell this story a little bit later, but it dawned on me, like one time when I was in this peaceful place, like such peace and so happy, I was literally looking for something to stress me out. Like, not that I wanted to be stressed out, but I was like, something's going to happen. Why is life so good right now? This is not normal. No, what this is way too weird, guys. It's quiet. And when I realized that, I was like, oh shit. Oh shit, Brandon's like kind of right. Like not even knowing we sometimes thrive on chaos. So that's exactly why I'm asking that question, because I did not make that realization until recently. So what did that look like for you as an adult?
Okay, so all right, so my chaotic life, right, as a kid, ended up turning and manifesting itself into a chaotic life a young adult. I got my first job when I was like 22 years old. And after a year, I became the director of a preschool. And so I was the director of a preschool. That's a full-time job in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I was nannying 2 kids on the side. So every day, as soon as I would get done, I would then go and watch 2 kids for another 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And in the same time, about a year later, I added a third job onto my plate. And I started working. Our preschool was housed inside of a church. And I started working as a different position, but I started working for the church.
Sure.
So before I knew it, I too was working 60 to 70 hours a week, just like my mom did. That's what I watched, right? And so the truth of it is, our bodies become addicted to our circumstances unless you become aware of them and can break that cycle. So my little body as a little girl became addicted to chaos. I had to thrive in chaos almost, because that's how I had to survive. Our bodies like familiar patterns, whether they're positive or negative, doesn't matter. And so even though my childhood was crazy and negative and aggressive and all these different things, that's what was familiar to me. And so to enter a state of peace or happiness or rest, that wasn't familiar to me.
Yep.
And that shocked my system. And if anything, your system will go against it as much as it can, because it doesn't want to enter a new pattern that isn't familiar to you. And so for so many of us, trauma dictates our life until we stop letting it dictate our life, right?
Absolutely.
Become aware of what it created in our lives. When you hear like the term manifesting is it's a very sexy term right now. And everybody's
it is
talking about manifest your life, manifest whatever. What we don't realize is that we are constantly unconsciously manifesting. So your reality, are your thoughts. It's that subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is really your inner child. Mm-hmm. And so if your inner child is wounded, does not feel seen or heard or held by you or by anybody, your life circumstances are going to match what your inner child experienced. And so that's what it was. Yep. I became addicted to the chaos. I continued to perpetuate that cycle, all while making sure that I never looked at my inner child or never looked at anything. And that's another trauma response, is busyness, right?
Yep.
And so that was me. The more busy I stayed, the more I didn't have to look at anything that ever happened. I didn't have to address it, and I didn't have to bring it to the surface.
Right.
And so I mean, the truth is, though, when you start to recognize what is going on, and you start to realize that a lot of your current life situations are just manifested from this unconscious pattern, this unconscious little you that's still inside of you, mm-hmm. you need to enter that healing journey. You need to embark on it so that you can actually live the life you deserve, not the life your little child thinks you're still in. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. That is amazing. And thank you for sharing that. Cause a lot of people share these similar things that happened to you as a child. Maybe not on the, maybe it might not have been schizophrenia, but it could have been alcoholism, but there was violence. So something like that. I just really wanted you to paint the picture of what it looked like as a child, and then kind of what it manifested into now. And then we'll kind of talk about how and what made you decide to go on the spiritual journey. But now we're going to go over to Miss Tara, because she has been waiting so patiently. Sorry, we were on a roll there.
Follow this story, right?
It's okay. It is totally okay. All right. So now I'm going to try to do the same thing for Tara, and I'm going to explain what Tara went through as a child, and she's going to tell her story now. So it says, I grew up in an environment where I dealt with parent adultification, which I'm going to ask what that is, and adultification, I'm also going to ask what that is, and a narcissistic stepmom. My awakening brought awareness that patterns from my childhood kept presenting themselves throughout my life, and I realized that I was seeking external validation to fill my lack of self-love and self-worth. So, first question, Tara, is can you describe what those two words mean? And I'm not even going to freaking say them again because you can say them because I can't even say them that fast.
Parentification would be like when you're given the role to make these like parental decisions, like for your family, right? So like for me, I'm the oldest sibling. And so a lot of the responsibility for my younger siblings fell on me. So for example, like when I was, I don't know, maybe like 8, 9 years old. I had a little sister, and so she's 9 years younger than me. So I was probably 10 then because I think, like 1 or something. I could be getting the ages off, but it's close. It doesn't matter. But, so my mom, like at night would like go out on dates and stuff once she was divorced. And I would be at home and I'd have school the next day and I'd be like staying up. I can remember like laying on the couch, like scared to fall asleep, watching 90210 because that's so appropriate. Watching being in charge of my sister and my brother, who was like 4 years younger than me. And so it was like things like that, or being responsible, just like taking care of the house and doing things that, not chores, not helping out, but like things that really shouldn't be placed upon the shoulders of a child. Right.
Yep.
And then adultification is kind of the same thing. It's where you're given these adult situations and adult decisions to make that you shouldn't be responsible for. There shouldn't be things, and there, there's nothing wrong with ever treating like a child, with like at a mature level, but also things that like you shouldn't know about. You shouldn't know like all the details of divorces or what your, parents are doing on the side. Like some of those things need to remain private. And in my own life, it really wasn't that way. So my parents, my mom and dad got married. They were teen parents and they got pregnant. My mom was 17. Well, she was 16 when she got pregnant. And so my parents married then. And so they had me a couple of years later, had my brother, and then they got divorced. So my parents divorced by the time I was like 5. And they both at first everything was great. So it was like one of those things where it sucks because your parents got divorced, but they got along and everything was fine. And then enter this revolving door of step parents. So that's where it gets kind of crazy. So like my mom remarried almost at the exact same time my dad remarried. And so I have next thing you know, I have a stepdad and a stepmom, and then they each family got pregnant. So now I had new siblings. So I had, on one side, a stepsister and a new half sister. And on the other side, I had 2 new stepbrothers and a half brother. So it like went from this like small, like it was just me and my brother. And then next thing you know, it's like the Brady Bunch on steroids. And so when you're dealing, and they were all so different and all the personalities were different. And so, as a child, like trying to navigate that, and when you're the oldest, especially, you just like carry this responsibility. And so you feel like I have to be this person for her, this person for him, this person for her, this person for him. And like in doing that, who am I? You like lose yourself in doing that, and you get stuck in these like patterns of people pleasing. Well, then it was, my mom ended up divorcing that stepdad. And that's when I kind of went through all that stuff of like really taking care of like my younger siblings and all of that. And then at the same time, my dad and stepmom had like moved out of state. And I so desperately wanted a normal family, just like everybody else. And I just wanted a mom and a dad. And I just wanted to like, be the center of somebody's world, and just to feel like somebody really loved me. Somebody saw me.
Right.
So I left my mom and I said, I'm going to go live with them. And then I did. And in doing that, developed an extremely unhealthy relationship with my stepmom. And she was, fighting her own battles. And in doing all of this, she would talk to me and treat me almost like a friend, instead of as a little kid. And I just wanted her approval so badly that anything she wanted me to do, I would do. And looking back now, I'm like, how could I do some of the things I knew better? But when you are in that mindset of just wanting that love so badly and just wanting to please so badly, you do things that you know are wrong. So, I mean, this is the one thing that sticks with me, I think, the most, is that she was like, well, you know, you could be my real daughter and we could have this real family. And she was like playing on this. And I'm like, yeah, I could. I really could. And she made me call my mom and tell my mom that I wanted her to give me up for adoption, that I hated her, that I never wanted to see her again. And anything like my mom would say back, my mom's like, well, you know, first of all, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, but a couple years ago, in years from now, you'll be a legal adult. And then if that's what you want to do, it'll be your decision. And I mean, I was so mean. Like, I hate you. Like, you know, you don't me, like all of these horrible things I said, as like, you know, my stepmom's feeding me all of this.
Right.
And I mean, and my mom just kind of was like, no, like, I'm not doing it. And that kind of was it. And I cut off my relationship with her completely. And I was like, I'm not even going to have anything to do with her. I didn't go visit her. I didn't talk to her. I mean, for years. My stepmom, you know, my grandparents had made us, all of the grandkids, like photo albums that had all the pictures. My stepmom had taken every picture out that had my mom in it. And she took it. She took everything. Like if there was like stuff that was like me and my dad and my mom, she would like rip it so that it was just like my dad and me, but not my mom wouldn't be. And then in the meantime, all this is going on, but my dad's completely gone. So he was he's just not stable in any sort of, not in a mental way, but just he could never stay put anywhere. So we have this house, we were all settled and whatever. And he would always constantly find jobs that were in other states so he was never even with us. So it was just us with my stepmom. And he was gone. He had no idea what was going on. And he was so completely like over the top obsessed with her and in love with her that it wouldn't have mattered anything that we said anyway, because in his eyes, you know, she could do no wrong. Perfect. Right. And we lived out like in the country, and where we lived, like all of her family, they were all of our neighbors. So it was really like, it felt like there was no way out. And I don't even know that at the time I was looking for that way out initially. But then as soon as I was like old enough, the same thing, like I left and, you know, I was going to school. I was randomly working at the airport and I met my husband. And so like right away, I was like, this guy is like my ticket out of here. So we ended so it was great because he was like, hey, I just got this, you know, we live in Illinois, and he was like, I just got this job in Wisconsin. Do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And so I was out of there and like never looked back. And so once I, you know, got in this relationship, this healthy relationship, you know, with my future husband, I started to like reintroduce my mom into my life, and like we reconnected and all of that. And then we ended up like getting married, and we have 3 kids. But that's kind of my story. It's not like
totally different stories, but still things happen. So a couple questions for you. When did your stepmom really, I guess for lack of better words, like brainwash you to like, you know, not like your mom? When did that start, and how long did it continue on?
So I think they must have got married. Like I was probably like 7-ish.
Okay.
When they got married. And so from like 7 to probably like 12, we would go like for weeks in the summer, every other weekend, like here and there during the week. And I don't know if it was happening then. I feel like probably those seeds were being planted here and there and here and there. And because she would call and talk to me on the phone and stuff like that, and always offered for me to come stay there. And I think that when my mom was dating her soon to be husband, which ended up being my second stepfather. I just didn't want to be in that anymore. I just wanted something stable. And I thought like, you know, in my 12-year-old brain that they could offer me something stable. And I just so badly, like, just wanted to be loved. And I didn't feel that. I just didn't feel that.
Right.
So, so when I went and stayed with them, when I was like between 12 and 13, it really was like full force right then. It was, when I look back at it now, I can see that it was instant and that it was constant, and that she was constantly feeding me things about like why my mom didn't like me, why she didn't love me, like why I needed to be there, you know, and I'm listening and taking all of this in, and it just became her thoughts, or her words became my thoughts.
Right.
Basically.
Wow. So is your dad still married to her?
No, but they just divorced. Oh my gosh, maybe like a couple of years ago.
Okay.
They were married for a really long time. And once I met my husband, he met my stepmom maybe one time, and he was like, hell no, I am never going to be around her. We're done. And I packed my stuff and I never went back. I never saw her again. And that was when I was 4 years old. I never saw her again. And so, because he was like, no, it's crazy because, you know, like from an outsider point of view, one time, and I never talked about her or anything, but he met her one time and was like, absolutely not. Like, this is not happening. And I was like, okay, you know,
doesn't it make you like, now looking back on like, say, certain times, certain days, times you were with her, that you'll think of a time that she did something and you're like, how the hell did I not catch on to what she was doing?
Absolutely. But here's the crazy part. So a lot of like the really damaging stuff that she did, a lot of it happened as I was like an older teenager, right? When I was like 15 to like 18. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because just in doing my own like inner child work and shadow work and stuff like that, I'm just starting to remember pieces, or like every now and then I'll get a glimpse of something and I'll like call my mom and I'll say, did this ever happen or whatever? And in talking it out, like going through these stories or whatever, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just remembered this happened and this happened and this happened. And you would think, because like it was so late in my teens, like everything would be right on the tip of my tongue, like right there, easy to access. And I think because I've been so ashamed of like my behavior, of how easily I was influenced, that I've just like really like blocked all of that. And so it's like slowly coming out, and I'm like working through it and accepting, but it's really hard, because for me, I look at it like, well, yes, technically I was a kid, I wasn't like 5. So I feel like I should have known better. But the reality is like, it's truly not my fault. I didn't know any better, because I just wanted that. I just wanted to be loved so badly that I was willing to do anything. And then looking at it, even going forward, I wasn't able to accept love really from anybody until, fairly recently, because that's a huge, like that feeling of not being worthy, not being enough, like not being able to accept unconditional love. Like that's been a huge issue for me.
So can you pinpoint, not a time, but why do you think, because with your stepmom wanting to be such a part of your life, even though it wasn't the right thing that she was doing, she did make you, I'm assuming, feel loved and feel like you were the center of the universe. So how did that transpire into you not feeling like you could be loved by people?
Because I think that because I was only getting that from her, first of all. Okay. And I think that because part of me knew how, I felt icky. Even in doing all of those things, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like, I was so upset with my mom, like at the time, we were just, we got through that phase where we just didn't get along. And, she was like, married to this new guy, and she'd been before that was like dating all the time. And I wanted that stability. I wanted those feelings, and I didn't get that. Like she was already from my mom, I was having that disconnect because I mean, she was going through her own things of just even from being like a teen mom and trying to, how did that work? Like looking at it now, I feel like she probably was like projecting onto me that I took away her childhood kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so we were not getting along. My dad was never around. So I just had these brothers that I was constantly in charge of taking care of. I was in charge of doing all of these things, and getting from her, she was making me feel like happy because I was pleasing her, right? But I couldn't ever be myself or speak anything that I thought. And at the same time, while she was saying all those things, she was also telling me, you know, well, everybody thinks you're annoying. You're really stupid. You're so ugly. You should do this, you know, like constantly saying all these things too. So while, yes, she's giving me those pieces when I'm following her instructions, on the flip side, when I'm not, there's all the negative sides.
Right. Was this your mom or stepmom?
This was my stepmom.
Your stepmom.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, hold on. I'm going to just say something too, because basically I think what you got from your stepmom, you were hoping to receive unconditional love, and what you received was conditional based love, which further perpetuated your belief that you didn't deserve unconditional love.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now that we have a background of, you know, your guys' childhood and how that transpired into the way and beliefs that you formed as older adults, now I want to get into, and we can just kind of quickly touch base on how you two met each other, what kind of job you were doing. So whoever wants to take that, I don't care. You can guys kind of both take whoever, whatever.
Okay, so like I said earlier, I became a director of a preschool, and I worked there for a total of 11 years. And Tara ended up coming in as her daughter was entering our 3-year-old program.
Okay.
And her daughter came to school for 2 years with us, and then was going to kindergarten, and Tara was looking for a job. And so we needed a new preschool assistant teacher at the time. And so we hired Tara on. So Tara and I worked together at the preschool for 6 years. Tara and I became fast friends. Like even before she started working there, I always developed really deep relationships. Mm-hmm. I did not realize this about myself, because you know, but I've always developed deep relationships with people that I work closely with. And so Tara and I just had a very different relationship from the beginning. And as time went on, we started to realize there were a lot of similarities between the two of us, but this is crazy. We were so unconscious at the time about everything that we weren't able to connect anything. And at the time, we didn't realize that we liked each other's energy. And now where we're at, we see that this is a match for us. It's a business match for sure, the way that we both operate and how we work with clients. But through everything that happened at the school together, and then recognizing how that pattern was kind of similar to our childhood, mm-hmm. and then we underwent a spiritual awakening at the same time. And so that kind of propelled us and pushed us on this journey, and it accelerated this journey like crazy. So I guess that's kind of like how we met.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And what really happened, or what transpired, is we were working at the school, and we thought that we were super fulfilled. We thought that this was it. Like, I cannot even begin to tell you how much we were positive that we were doing exactly what we needed to do. We thought we knew everything about it. And when COVID hit, our school moved to an online platform for just the remainder of the year. And then over summer, we both were looking at each other like, you want to start a podcast? We've always wanted to do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. And we were into murder mysteries, like into, right? Crime Junkie.
Oh, yes.
Of course, right? And so for years, we had been saying we were going to start a crime podcast. I have no idea how this even, we still are
Yeah.
like, this is where like some of our beliefs, like really our deep rooted beliefs now, our core beliefs have come from. We have no idea why, but we started a podcast called Unapologetically You.
Okay.
Completely opposite of Crime Junkie.
Right.
Yeah.
We were interviewing people very similar to this, having
Mhm.
people tell their stories and talk about where their journey took them and where they're at now and what they're doing with it. And then we eventually ended up bringing in holistic therapists and holistic counselors and just different types of healing modalities.
Uh-huh.
And from that, we totally, our minds were blown and we entered the spiritual awakening. And we had been on a self-help personal development journey for at least the last 3 years prior to all of this. And we were, doing guided journals. We were taking care of our bodies. We were trying to eat better, trying to, move ourselves and all that kind of good stuff. But we weren't really diving into the self-discovery, or soul discovery is what we like to call it.
Mhm.
And so we underwent this spiritual awakening, which was completely hard. I mean, a spiritual awakening is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it really is truly difficult. And I think depending upon your level of consciousness determines what you would consider that moment for you. For some people, they would just call it a healing journey and say that's it. And for other people, depending upon how deep they go into it, would recognize, no, it's a spiritual journey. Healing journeys and spiritual journeys are absolutely one and the same. It's just where you're at consciousness-wise. And as you continue to develop and become more and more conscious, you recognize that this is a spiritual journey, that you are diving deep inside of yourself. And while you're diving deep inside of yourself, you realize you are so deeply connected to this earth, to other humans, to everything that ever was and ever is. And so through that, we started taking, we went to every type of spiritual counselor. We went to every type of healing session that you could. We started getting certified in different modalities and recognized that while we thought we were fulfilled previously, it's because there was only a small portion of it that was being fulfilled. And it was in the dynamic and the relationships that we built with adults, basically at this preschool, with the families, and helping these families kind of navigate their family, their own lives, right? And we went above and beyond at the time, really engaging with all of these families and getting to know these moms who just needed an outlet or needed somebody to coach them through that moment of time.
Right.
And we realized this is what we were called to do. We were called and are called to help people navigate their spiritual journeys and help people learn to maneuver the ins and outs of what this looks like so that they can learn to really stand in their higher self and stand in this person they were always meant to be before life got its hands on you, right?
Yeah.
Experiences, until we become conscious of it, our experiences do dictate us. We allow them to define us, but they don't have to.
Yeah.
And so really unpeeling and uncovering all these layers about ourselves and our belief systems that we've created, right?
Right. Yep.
That's how your spiritual journey and your healing journey begins. And you will get to this point where eventually you just become this witness of your life, right? And you see that everything that's happening is happening for you. The universe is here to work with you and for you and wants you to be guided into this higher whole version of yourself that already exists.
Yes. You worded that so perfectly, and that's like a perfect segue into all the fun questions I'm about to ask you guys.
We love fun questions.
So you already answered a couple questions, in terms of, so first, okay, we'll just start here. So your business is called Soulful Healers, and you guys are spiritual empowerment coaches.
Yes.
And what you do is you help all souls embody their highest self using holistic healing practices and spiritual transformation. So a little bit, you kind of already explained like what a spiritual journey was. And I guess the first question that I have for whoever wants to answer this is, how can people know that they might even be on one before really realizing it? And I'm asking all these questions in kind of a selfish sense because a lot of, I've already had the rapid transformational therapist, which is all about energy and becoming, self-aware, all your subconscious, all that stuff. And so now I'm like, how long have I maybe been on this spiritual journey? When I hear about like spiritual, and please do not take offense to this, but I'm totally thinking about like sage waving around and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't really know if that's like who I am, but I definitely believe in like energies and stuff like that. So I just don't want people to like be turned off or like freaked out or like that's totally not me, because you could be on a spiritual journey and not realize it. Like you don't have to like, yeah, people just kind of like hear something and they think that's like what it is. So now that I've just explained all of that, how can people know that they might be on one?
Well, there's one thing that I want to say first. It's interesting that you said that, like, you think of the sage aspect of it. What we get a lot of times too is that's one way that's absolutely, mainstream media will go ahead and put spirituality with crystals and sage, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then there's another side of it that we get often that means you must be affiliated with a religion.
Yep.
You're talking about this religious background and like diving deep into the Bible and into God. And what we want to say is spirituality is somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Right? I think that if the more we try to box ourselves into terms and attach ourselves to certain labels, we're doing ourselves a disservice by doing that, because your spiritual journey, your healing journey will look entirely different. And whether that means that you are affiliated with a religion or whether that means you are full blown into crystals and you are dancing under the moon, you can do them both, know?
What feels right for you.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that portion.
Yeah. And I think to know, or you asked how would you know if you're like beginning this journey? I think that like the biggest thing is if you feel like there's something more than just what is happening right now. And I think that's a sign that you're either already on it or you're ready to begin.
Yeah. I think honestly, just anybody, like if I look at it, like what back in the day when we first started ours, it was simply we were trying to know who we were a little bit more.
Yep.
When you start to dive, or when you're curious, like, you know what, like, why do I do that? Or how do I change that? Why does this keep happening to me?
Why does this keep happening?
Yeah, those are all moments where you don't realize what you're embarking on. And whether you believe in God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, it all happens in divine timing when you are ready to embark on this journey. And sometimes everything that's happened to us prior to that makes it impossible to think that there's something bigger and better out there for you. Right.
Yep.
But the truth is there is, and it's available at your fingertips. You just have to actually want to get your hands dirty. You have to actually want to participate in this, because this is such an interactive, oh my gosh, it's all over you type of journey. I mean, there's no part of you that's going to be left uncovered. Your deepest, darkest secrets are going to come out. The things that you are not proud about, things that you love about yourself, but you don't want to admit.
Yeah.
It all jumps out at you, and it's an all encompassing journey.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. I mean, even the dark, sad times, when you look at it, it's such a cool thing to recognize that it's your time.
Right.
Like this is happening for you. Like, and it's your turn, and that's so freaking cool.
Yeah, it is awesome. And I'll tell you like a little bit with my journey, just a little quick background for me. So last year, COVID hit. I was a travel agent. Travel completely like nobody was doing travel anymore. And so I was listening to, I got like really, really depressed because I would attach all my self-worth on productiveness, money, all of that stuff. So a lot of people
Everybody like
do that. So when last year COVID hit, we all kind of lost our identities. They're like, who are we? What are we doing?
Yep.
So I was listening to a podcast, and I've told this story several times on here. I was listening to Jay Shetty's podcast, and he had Deborah Messing and Madonna. Not the Madonna singer, another lady. I really got to figure out who she is. And one of them, I couldn't tell who, was talking about how they found their purpose. And they said, whenever you look out into the world and something hurts your heart, and you ask yourself, like, what makes your heart hurt whenever you look out into the world? And then once you come up with that answer, you then say, okay, well, what can I do to make this world better? Like, what can I do? And she's like, and when I answered both of those questions, I found out my purpose. So I was like, okay, is it really just that simple to figure out my purpose? So I was like, well, what makes me sad when I look out into the world? And honestly, what made me sad was an exact reflection of myself, was me sitting on a couch during COVID, being so depressed, crying because I felt like I was worthless. I wasn't contributing money to my family. And I just felt like shit. And I felt like I was the only one in the world experiencing this, even though I know I wasn't. So what made my heart hurt was people feeling alone in the world.
Yeah.
So then the next question was, how am I going to then solve this solution? And I was like, what am I good at? I'm good at talking to people and having deep conversation. I am so curious on how people got from here to where they are and why they operate in the way that they do. So I was like, well, I love podcasts. So why not have a podcast getting to have deep conversations with people in this way instead of surface level? How's the weather? How's your kids? How's the wife? No, I want to have like real deep. Why do you behave this way? Why did you get addicted to drugs? So on and so forth. So I say all of that that was really the first thing that I had to do to become aware of everything. Yeah. And then that's when I kind of started therapy and all of that. But I feel that I have been on this spiritual journey a lot longer than I've realized, because now I'm getting more education about the energies and the subconscious mind and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, my healing journey that I've been on through therapy has actually been the spiritual journey also.
Yes. And it's a spiritual journey back to you, back to your true self.
Yep.
And I mean, we can talk about, beliefs and all of that, but the truth is we as humans our natural state is to be conditioned, right?
Yeah.
It happens to us without us even recognizing it. We are conditioned by our parents,
right,
by our neighbors, by our friends, by our school system, by society, by our churches, by our communities. Anything and everything conditions you. And it forces you to create these belief systems. And in the end, they're generally limited belief systems.
Yeah.
And perpetuates our cycles of who we are over and over and over again. Yep. And when you enter a spiritual journey, what you're starting to do is break the confines of that, right?
Yeah.
You're so to speak, there's a lot of metaphors out there about being chained to it, that we're being chained. And so you're breaking free, essentially. You're deconditioning. That's called the deconditioning process. Which fun fact, they talk about it taking 7 years. It's a 7-year cycle.
Oh, Jesus.
Uh-huh. And the fun fact about that is that you get to that end of the 7 years, guess what? There's more deconditioning that has to be done, because you're in a physical body, and we've got these brains that's how they operate.
Right.
And so for us, it's this deeper knowing of, I know for a lot of people, they're going to be like, what? But we are not this body, right? Like if you start to talk to spiritual teachers and people that you would deem enlightened, let's go ahead and say, they talk about how you're not your thoughts, right? You are not, that those don't actually represent who you are. And the more that you dive deep into that and contemplate that, really, you'll start to realize that you're the one that hears the thoughts. You're the ones that is observing everything going on. So that must mean there's something else inside of you that is you. And it's not just being chained to this brain and to these thoughts. And when you become the observer and you witness it, that's how you start to flow through life a little bit better and navigate it, because you're sitting in that moment. And even if you're having a hard day, you can sit there and eventually get to the point of, God, my mind is coming up with some crazy thoughts today.
Yep.
They're not mine. And
Yep.
you start to realize, oh my gosh, I would never want to think about myself that way. I deserve better. You deserve better.
Yeah.
We are all just completely made of love and are these divine beings that have the ability to create the life that we desire. We have to take our power back and start actually creating that life we desire instead of living what we've been confined to, right?
Right. And the thoughts, like, gosh, man, there are so many cliche quotes and sayings about our mind and about our thoughts. And I'm really, really working on the whole thoughts, because you're right. It's kind of taking a step back and seeing these thoughts. And let's say, for instance, me and my daughter like have a conversation, and I get sad about something because I all of a sudden think that's the reality.
Yeah.
I have to take a step back and be like, no, that's just simply a thought. Thought does not equal reality. And I made a post about it on Instagram recently. Like, there's a lot of comfort in knowing that these thoughts don't always reflect that this is truly what's happening in a reality. It could be based on so many different things, on what you personally believe, on your experiences that you've experienced. But all these different factors just doesn't necessarily make it a reality. And that's comforting in for me, because I'm like, shit, it's just a thought. It can come and go, and it doesn't have to shape things. And I'm just finding a lot of comfort in that, because normally I would let a lot of people just let thoughts rule their whole life and let it become the reality and let all this outside influence just run their lives. And then, you know, by the time that they're 40, 50, 60, and they're like, wow, I haven't even been living for myself. I've been living according to everybody else's rules, if you will. You know, society says I have to work a 9 to 5. Society says that you have to have a white picket fence. Society says that you have to be rich. Society says that you have to be married and you can't get divorced, whatever it is, so on and so forth. So I'm kind of going on a tangent, but it's it's amazing. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. I've already asked that question. So I think what does it mean to be, and I know we've touched a little bit on this, but what does it mean to be the highest version of yourself, and what makes that different than being just the best person you can be? I like the fact that it says highest version of yourself. Yeah. So whoever wants to answer that.
So I cannot stop talking. This is my jam.
Well, you guys can both also answer. Like, if you have something that you want to add to it, Tara, please feel free. You guys know each other way better. Just
Exactly. I always jump in with whatever she leaves. If there's something she forgets, don't worry. I got you.
Perfect. Perfect.
So think of it this way. Your higher self already exists. We live in a quantum reality where time is it's not like linear, really. Right. Mm-hmm. And so your higher self, that future self of you, that one that whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's to be more confident, whether it's to be a better mom, whether it's to build this business that you desire, whatever that is, that version of you already exists.
Yep.
And you'll hear so often so many people just say, well, all you have to do is embody her. You have to, what does she do what's her day-to-day look like? Start to live that. How does she interact with people? Start to live that. But the truth is it's not just that. It's embodying that feeling and embodying what that person at that time truly will feel like. So if you finally get that business, or you finally are the better mom that you've always desired to be, what will you feel like?
Right.
And stepping into that means that you become the fullest expression of you in that moment. And you get to tap into this higher version of yourself and literally consciously ask yourself in the moment, is this what my higher self would do? Is this the decision that my highest self would make? So when you're in that fear-based moment of like, oh my God, I can't do this. This is scary. I can't go live. I can't do this. You have to sit there and say, is this what my higher self would do?
Yeah.
And as you start to jump and take those leaps and jump into what that higher version of you will do, you start to become her or him. And you start to really embody this person that you were always meant to be. The trajectory of your life is for you to continue to grow. That's why we're here. And when you start to grow into this newer version of you, guess what? The next new higher version of you already exists.
Yeah.
And you're constantly evolving into this version of you. It doesn't mean that like you have this morning routine. It doesn't mean that you are the volunteer on everything. It doesn't have to mean any of that. It means embodying the fullest expression of you, of who you desire to be at your core. And the truth is, becoming your higher self is a spiritual journey, because most of us have no idea who we are at our core. We've got all these like handprints and footprints all over us from life, from different experiences and from people, that we forgot long ago who we really are. And so when you're on this healing spiritual journey, becoming your higher self, it's really uncovering and unpacking all of the shit that's happened to you and getting back to your true essence and diving in and leaning into what that feels like and what you want to bring to life in this world, what you are called to live as and embody in this world.
Yeah. So I know, like for me, when I'm embodying my highest self, it's when I'm feeling my feelings. It's when I'm trusting my intuition. And it's when I'm just listening, like stopping and listening and connecting. That's how I know that I'm embodying my highest self.
Right.
Yeah. So when you say that, Tara, how does one listen to themselves? How can they separate because I know there's ego and then there's your subconscious and all that stuff. You guys know way better, but how do you know what is the difference? Like when people are like, what do you mean listen to yourself? What does that mean? Because a lot of times when you want to go do something, like let's say talking about going live, like say somebody has a really big fear about going live and they're like, no, I can't do it. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to look silly. People are going to make fun of me. How do you know how to listen to yourself and what that actually sounds like?
So we say this a lot. So all the time, we're all making these decisions with our minds, with our heads, right? So it's about stepping outside of that and like feeling into your heart and making decisions from your heart. Like step out of your head, don't think about it, but just feel from your heart. Does this feel aligned for me? Does this feel like something that I want to do? Does this feel right for me? And when you start to step away from the mind and really start responding from your heart, that's how you get more in touch like with your body. And you'll start to recognize how things feel, like how yeses feel in your body. How does a no feel for you? And it's different for everybody. Not everybody has the same things, right? But it's really just stepping outside of your head and just leaning in with your heart.
Yeah. And it's like really like that mind-body connection. Yeah. We've all lost it. I mean, to be honest, we've lost it completely.
Yeah.
And like when you think about like biologically, right? Like our gut, right, is the second brain.
Yep.
Okay. So when you get those gut feelings, right? Like that's your intuition telling you. For some people don't get gut feelings like me. But that's a whole other podcast. But when you are, as a kid, often like we were told like that's kind of like a cliche thing. Oh, what's your gut telling you, right? It's a saying. No. It's not a saying. Like what we learned was to let go of your feelings and get more in this logical head. And the truth is you need to get out of that logical head, because your brains and the way things work, we're little computers, man. Like our brains are just little computers that are predisposed for certain things, that are hardwired in certain ways. And so the more you lean into that, the more you're leaning into a computer program, essentially.
Yeah.
You can get back into your heart and into your feelings. You're living alive.
Because your body knows what's right for you. Your body already knows.
Absolutely. Whenever I was talking to Lauren Jean, she's the rapid transformational therapist, one of the biggest things that I've really noticed lately that happens to me. And she explained a lot about like brain waves. And when you're in slower like brain waves, this is when like you're really in tune with your subconscious. Anyways, so like in the middle of the night, I'll wake up, let's say 3 o'clock in the morning, and maybe something's been on my mind, like, oh, I have an episode releasing tomorrow, or what should I do about this? So on and so forth. And I will wake up, and maybe within like a minute of being awake, just maybe one sentence, even one word will just like come to me. And I asked her like what that is. I'm like, is this like, and she's like, Melissa, that is your intuition telling you, talking to you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit, because I have had so many of those moments.
Yeah.
One of the moments was when I first started being on Clubhouse, and I was spending a lot of time on there, and I was like really stressed because I was having major FOMO about like not being on there, but also not being productive. And just one night in the middle of the night, like I woke up and it was like, you got to focus on you. Don't worry about everybody else trying to message you, wanting to be on your podcast. You have this goal in your head and you have to follow that, Melissa. Don't worry about pleasing other people. And that literally, like, it was that I was like, I am at ease. I'm at peace with this now, knowing I don't have to go and do and be everything that everybody wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I just like to hear what other people's intuition and their inner voice sounds like, because it's different for everybody. So I want people to know, like, what does that look like for me?
Absolutely. And I think the other point too is so many people say whatever they want to call it. They want to call it your intuition. They want to whatever. For us, that's your soul. That's this higher self of you that's trying to guide you, that's illuminating the path for you when you're ready to tune in and listen in.
Yeah.
And you have to get to a point where you can quiet yourself. It's not necessarily quiet your mind, but familiarize yourself with your mind and get to a point where you can decipher the difference between that's just my mind and that's actually me. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we both have different ways, but one of the best ways, like for us to get in touch with ourselves every morning, Tara and I are very, it's interesting. We've become very go with the flow people, but we have sort of a regimented routine that we just know there's certain things that we have to do in order to be our best selves, to be that higher self that day. And so one of them is journaling, and we do stream of consciousness journaling, which is basically getting in touch with that higher self or that soul and being able to communicate directly. I mean, you can sit down and just, write sometimes 3, 4, 5 pages in the morning of, this is what we're doing. We're so proud of you. This is so great. Like, you are on the right path. You know what? Focus a little bit more on this, this, and this, and focus a little bit more on this, this, and this, and you're going to get there. Right. And for us, it's in writing. But at the same time, you're hearing it, right? In your mind. Yep. And you then can actually write it down. And for us, writing it down makes it stick and makes it seem very real, like,
right.
Where, like you said, when you're questioning at first, like, wait a minute, what the hell was that? Yeah. Is this me? Like, who is this? What is this? And so for us as creatures that need that confirmation, like that's kind of how we operate. Yeah. Right. Really good to write it down, because eventually you'll get to a point of like, you'll read a phrase and be like, I would never say those words. Those would not come out of my mouth. I don't even know. I would never use that phrase. Right. And then, okay.
Can I stop you right there? Like, I'm telling you, this is the craziest thing ever, because I have never done podcasting before ever in my life. I have never interviewed anybody ever in my life. Sorry. But I feel like now this is like what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't get nervous for interviews. I barely even prepare for interviews now, except for the fact that I really want to do my due diligence and meet, like, I get to talk to freaking soulful healers. I'm going to do my research and figure out all the questions I can ask them and want to talk to them. But it's not because I'm nervous of like, oh God, what am I going to say? I have to be overly prepared. It's like, no, I'm just really excited. So this feels so natural to me now. Like, sometimes, like you just said, the words coming out of my mouth, I'm like, who the fuck is this person?
Yes.
Saying this and asking these questions, like, Melissa, quiet little Melissa, not that people would be like, you're not quiet, Melissa, but like doubtful Melissa would never ask these questions, or would just I just can't believe it. It's like, who is this person? So I
Who is
love that you said that,
Yeah.
because
It's
that's literally what I feel.
It's a real thing. Honey, I like literally, let me tell you, every time Tara and I do something, and I always say to her, I'm always not nervous, but I'm always like, what am I going to say? You know, not that I'm a loose cannon, but like, I love to talk. I can't help it. And so oftentimes though, I will get done and I'll look at her and be like, I don't even know what I said. Did any of it make sense? Did I just ramble on? Because it's just flowing. It's this conscious stream. And I was operating from an unconscious standpoint for so long, which most humans are. I mean, fun fact, most of us operate unconsciously 95 to 98% of our day.
Right.
So when you start to break that pattern and enter this conscious state, things are just flowing through you.
And when you just know that you're doing something that you're just meant to do, and you just feel it like in your soul, you know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then all of that just comes, it just flows.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I'm loving our conversation. Okay. So we've touched a little bit about this, but what is the ego, and how can people tell if the ego is running their life?
Yeah. So if your ego, like we hear so often that like, oh, your ego, we want the death of our ego. We don't want our ego to run our life. That's not necessarily true. Your ego is here and it's intended for a purpose. It's here to keep you safe. If we didn't have our ego, I'd be dead on the side of a road by now. I would have gotten hit by a car. My hands would be burned to death. I wouldn't have my limbs. I mean, there'd be so many things that would have happened to me. So I am completely grateful that we all have, it's true though. I mean, I'm completely grateful we all have our egos. The other side to the ego though, is your ego wants to keep you safe, and safe equals small. And so the ego wants to keep you in what it already knows. So if you are like, you know what, I really want to go try some new thing. Let's say, I mean, I just started belly dancing, for instance.
Woo!
And, when I wanted to do it, my initial reaction was my ego telling me, you can't do this. Like, oh my gosh, like you're going to make a fool of yourself. You're going to look ridiculous. Don't do this. And that's when I stop myself and I ask, what would my higher self do in this moment? My higher self is always a fuck yes, we're doing that.
Yep.
So you can tell the difference right there. If you are noticing that it's simply to keep you in a familiar pattern. It's simply to keep you inside your comfort zone. And sometimes our ego has the tendency to be super negative. And it has the tendency to tell you that you aren't enough, that no, you can't do that because you're going to suck at it. Like, don't even try. Like, we already know this is not for you. Yeah. So anything that's negative or keeps you from what you're truly desiring, from if there's something you've always wanted to do, but you just won't do it because you feel like it's not for you or you won't be good at it, that's your ego.
Yep.
And so the difference, like for me, is always constantly asking myself in that moment, if I feel like it's a negative thought that's come through or something to keep me small, I will ask myself, I'll quiet myself, I'll do a little breathing techniques, and I'll sit there and I'll say, is this what my higher self would do? Or what would my higher self do here? And you'll get an answer right away, whether it's in your gut or it's in your heart, or you hear it, or you just know it. You'll know the answer to it. But that ego, I mean, it's great. You don't want your ego to die. Again, we'd die if our ego like truly died. But you don't want it to control your life.
Right. And that's a great, I really like the distinction between you saying, would my higher self do this? Like, is that something that they want? And it's like, I'm trying to think of something. Okay. So for instance, my boyfriend loves singing karaoke. We literally have 2 speakers. When we go camping in our RV, we bring our speakers and we do karaoke, or if they have karaoke at the campsites, he does that. He loves singing and he's good at it. I don't sing because I feel like I'm not good at it. Like, I do enjoy singing, like singing loud in the car.
Right.
But my boyfriend always wants me to like not join with him, but he wants me to join in on the fun. And he's like, babe, like, who cares? This is karaoke. This isn't some freaking like Grammys. You don't got to be perfect. And that is literally my ego telling me, Melissa, you're going to sound stupid. People are going to make fun of you. When it's like, No, it's going to be fun to go up there and sing Madonna like a prayer and belt it out. Like, who cares? Like, and I love the fact that like now I can ask myself, like, would your higher version do this? Fuck yes, she would. She would go up there and sing it.
Exactly. And it's so like it's that inner child of you. Like when you think about a child that hasn't had life touch it yet, right? When they come out, they are innocent and they are free, like freer than you can even imagine. When you see little girls twirling around in front of an entire crowd of people, they don't care.
Right.
Little boys like rustling each other and getting all crazy, they don't care what anybody's going to say about them.
They're just curious.
Yes. Yeah. And they're experiencing and they're trying to embrace themselves and figure out what they like. We weren't supposed to stop doing that.
Nope.
Society taught us to do that. We got put in this box and we were like, oh, adults don't do this. You're not allowed to do that. You don't want to make yourself look like a fool. No, live life as a fool sometimes.
Right.
That's okay. Dive into it. Just you and express yourself to the fullest expression.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, Kim, I'm going to read your little thing that you had on your website and kind of like what you do in terms of your Soulful Healer business. So it says that your purpose in life is to help others shed their limiting beliefs and connect with who they are really at the soul level. Once you are aligned in mind, body, and spirit, you are living a more authentic life filled with passion and purpose. So we've kind of already answered what does it mean to be aligned with your mind, body, and soul? But how can people, what are some simple things that people could do starting today, right now, after they listen to this episode, that they can become more aligned with their mind, body, and soul?
Oh my gosh. Everything. So, I mean, there's little techniques. Like at this point, Tara and I really believe everybody and anybody should be meditating. I mean, and it doesn't have to be meditating in the way that you assume meditation exists. You know, you need to become familiar with your mind. That's the point of meditation. And so to quiet yourself, your actual body, to sit down and just listen to what's going on in here allows you to start to differentiate between what is your mind and what is you. And as you do that, that's like learning that mind-body connection, right? And then as you continue to familiarize yourself with it, what'll end up happening is you feel a deeper connection in your heart and in your soul, because what you're doing is you're reprogramming your mind, you're reprogramming your belief system to recognize that, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I these thoughts aren't me. And if they aren't me, there's got to be something else. And when you start to lean into your heart, you start to realize that there is that connection. There is this deep divine connection within us all. And so meditation, hands down, absolutely start doing that. But journaling, I would say for both of us is like our go-to. Yeah, I think that's the thing that gets me in touch the deepest with myself. And it lets me see myself honestly. Yeah. So journal prompts are great. Free writing is my jam. And then there's also, I mean, this is like a contradictory one, but the shadow work. Like shadow work allows you to dive deep into yourself and see the shadow side of you that is probably afraid to be seen. And when you start to bring that to the light, what you end up doing is going through a process that's pretty difficult and your body will feel uncomfortable. But once it's released, you will feel comfortable. And so I think I'll just give this exercise and somebody can do it if they choose. So a lot of times our shadow self is just our side that likes to be hidden. So if you sit down and literally make a chart and on one side write your positive qualities, write everything you know to be true about you that's positive. What is often your shadow is the opposite of that positive. And so that's the other side. So for instance, like I would say previously that I'm super honest. Okay. I have a tendency to blurt out things, even if I shouldn't. It's my, I think it's a positive, but it can be a negative, I guess.
Right.
So anyway, so that's me. But the negative side of that is, or the opposite, I don't even want to say negative. The shadow side of that would be that I'm a liar. right? So I'm honesty. I think that's an amazing quality to have. But then there's the shadow side of myself that's a liar, because she lies about who she really was. She's lied for so long about what she wanted, about who I wanted to be, what I wanted to lean into, because I was hiding that self of me. And so oftentimes your body, when you just say, all of a sudden, when you're like, I am a liar, your body will have a visceral reaction.
Right.
Become so uncomfortable because you are shaking this familiar pattern, and something that's been hidden deep down in that subconscious mind for most of your life is now coming to the light. And so your body is literally like, oh my God, what do we do? Put it away, put it away. Why is she letting it be seen?
Yeah.
Right.
And when you acknowledge, oh honey, like, it's okay to be a liar in this sense.
Right.
It's okay that you lied. That's not your fault. There was nothing wrong with it. And then when you start to look at, when did I start to say that this characteristic is something that has to be hidden? What moment presented itself in my life that I thought that this was not an okay trait to have? And when you pinpoint it to a specific event, you can see it objectively and be like, oh my gosh, I was 8 years old. I was 8 when I thought that I had to start hiding myself. I was 8 when I thought that it wasn't okay to be who I wanted to be and that I had to start lying about who I was. And as you do that, you will literally feel energy and emotions that have been stored in your body come to the surface and naturally release from your body. It will feel, oh my God, I've got like full body chills. You'll feel like that. You'll feel a weight lift off your shoulder because you've been carrying this and it's been stored in your body your entire life.
Yeah. I gotta learn more about this shadow work.
Yes. Girl, yes.
Yeah, I really do. Because as soon as you said that you were a liar, and I was like, wait, what? And then you explained why you were a liar. I was like, oh, okay.
Yes. So there's just that we don't want to bring to the surface because we're embarrassed about it, or we're ashamed by them, because society has taught us that there are positive and negative characteristics. There are positive and negative emotions. That's all bullshit.
Yeah.
There's just characteristics. There's just emotions.
Yep.
You have to be able to bring all of that to the surface and really feel it and lean into it to be able to grow, to be able to change, to be able to evolve into your higher self or who you want to be.
Yeah.
So shadow work is super important, especially because it's just stored in your body. Like you guys don't want that. You want to all the energy that you have available to you to be able to create versus being stagnant and being this being that you've always been.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Really quickly, for anybody that is watching on Facebook right now, I don't know how much of a delay there is, but if you guys are listening in, watching this conversation, and if you guys have a question for Kim and Tara, please feel free to put it in the comments and we would be happy to answer that question. I'm still going along with my questions, but if you guys want to pop in and write one, I would be happy to ask them what your question is. Okay, Tara, I'm kicking it over to you now.
All right.
So your sole purpose is to help people create calm and balance in order to expand your awareness. I will meet you where you are on your journey and assist in your personal growth. So first of all, what does that mean to expand your awareness? And then the second part of that question is, what are some things that people could do starting today that could help them expand their awareness?
I mean, okay. So often we don't even realize what's going on, right? Like we said, we live a lot of our day unconsciously. So when you bring awareness to what you're doing, you really live in the moment. You live in the now, because really there only is the now, right? So you have to take the time to be present, to be mindful, to recognize what's going on around you, and to recognize like what's happening in your body and how you're feeling. And it's a lot of the same things, like for awareness. Again, meditation is huge. And like Kim said, meditation doesn't have to be sitting in the dark and the quiet with your candles burning and humming. No, you can go for a walk. You can, maybe you're a painter, and while you're painting, that's when you feel that like relaxed meditative state, or maybe it's when you're washing the dishes or exercising or dancing. So it doesn't have to be that like typical, sitting crisscross and humming and fart. Another thing, like you can engage in a mindful practice. So we have on our website, we have lots of freebies, and one of the freebie things that we have is a 30-day mindfulness challenge, and it's really just 30 days of different activities that you can do to start to cultivate a mindful lifestyle. And then of course, like there's journaling, and it's a lot of the same practices that like Kim just mentioned. Because they all just work together. And when you really start any of these practices, like it opens up your entire self to this whole new world of learning about yourself, learning about who you are, why you do the things you do, and to really like stay present and to be aware.
Yeah. Great answer. Great answer. So question for you about journaling. Would it be wrong? Because here's the thing. I know I should be journaling, but it's like I get tired of all this freaking work I have to do. Work out, journal, meditate. It's like, how many freaking hours in the day can I do all this stuff? So I really started doing, well, I haven't done it recently, but audio journaling, getting one of my voice memos out and just talking into that, whether it's just something I want to get out of my brain because it's bothering me, but I just need to say it. Would it be bad to do an audio journal?
Oh gosh.
No. And here's the thing. If you don't feel like journaling, don't do it. There's no right and wrong to your practice. You have to honor yourself and what feels good for you. So there are days that, do I feel like meditating? Hell no. So I don't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like very few days I don't feel like journaling because that's just really my jam. But if I don't feel like doing it, I don't do it. If I don't feel like exercising, I don't do it. You have to honor the way you feel, and so that it doesn't become a chore,
Yeah, exactly.
What we ended up deciding to do more so, because at one point in our lives, we were very regimented. Like first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, and whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, instead of looking at it that way, I'd invite you to start looking at like, how much time are you going to devote to you a day? Yeah. And whether it's 30 minutes and that's all you've got, or whether it's an hour every day that you're going to do, whatever it is for you, look at that hour, look at those 30 minutes and ask yourself, ask your body, ask your higher self, what is it that I'm called to do today? Is it to spend the full 30 minutes working out? Is it to spend 15 minutes or 20 minutes doing an intense workout and then I'm going to do 10 minutes of meditation? Or is it going to be that I'm going to not work out at all today, but I'm going to do intensive journaling practices, and then I'm going to meditate, and then I'm going to do somatic shaking, and I'm going to do all these other different healing modalities that you can incorporate. So it's more so about what are you allowing, what are you allotting to yourself each day?
Yeah.
And
if you're not,
good,
and this is the other fun thing, if you're only allotting yourself 5 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and call bullshit. The truth is our entire day is our routine. Our entire day is our habits, is who we are. So if you are like, you know what, I just don't have time in my life to become this higher version of myself or to start working on myself. No. Look at your routine and what can you replace? So maybe you drive to Dunkin' Donuts every single morning to get a coffee and you wait in line for 15 minutes. And by the time you leave, it's 20 minutes. Okay. That 20 minutes could be better spent at home with you making coffee at home. Yep. You just interchange the activities that you have to give yourself, because we all have the same 24 hours in a day. Yeah. It's whether or not you wake up actively and are choosing you in every single moment.
And it's access to it. Doesn't mean you have to go from nothing to an hour and a half every day. You can just build it up in, a couple of minute increments until like it feels right.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So something that I'm recently starting to do. So my boyfriend wakes up and listens to the news, and I don't like the news. I do not like that to be my morning. And so we really don't spend the mornings together, honestly. And so we got rid of this patio furniture because it was like stools, and we're old and we can't sit on stools anymore. We need back support. Okay. So I just bought this, patio furniture, and it came yesterday, and my boyfriend put it together, and he surprised me because I thought it wasn't getting here till like later last night. And so now I have it on my patio, and every morning that's where I'm going to be drinking my freaking coffee, reading a book, playing with my puppy. I went out there this morning to like put together these questions, and I'm just like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's so life-giving, honestly. When you start, whatever that routine looks like, when you start to realize you're doing this for you because it feels good for you and that you can't be your higher self without it, it's life-giving.
Yeah.
Yes.
It gives you so much more energy to create exactly what you're trying to create in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just have a couple more questions for you guys. I know we're at an hour and a half, but we're having so much fun here. So it's great. So if somebody were to start like doing one of your coaching sessions, one of your one-on-one coaching sessions, what really starts in the first session? Like what is something the very first thing that you do whenever you start meeting with somebody?
Sure. So we have actually 3 different packages. So our 12-week is for somebody who is just starting their spiritual journey, right? Who is probably going through an awakening, doesn't really recognize it, is interested in spirituality in general. Our second package is for somebody that's already on their spiritual journey. And so that's an 8-week package. And then our last one is for somebody who's stuck, and that's a 4-week. So our first sessions are always a little bit different based on your needs, right?
Okay.
So Tara and I, how we operate, I do a session and then she does a session with a client, and it goes back and forth. So you get 2 coaches essentially.
Yeah.
And so for the first session is always me. And so for the 12-week, what we introduce right away is we talk about deconditioning, what that is. We talk about unlearning. We talk about spirituality just in general. And then we do all sorts of teaching transformational modalities, whether that's learning about tapping, learning ways to meditate, discussing affirmations, somatic shaking, journaling, spiritual practices, breath work, all of that. We kind of incorporate that all into that first session so that you're prepared as we go along to continue to kind of use these tools as you go. Somebody that's in the 8-week though, we start off right away with, we develop your spiritual practice right away and what you're going to consistently work through and try to work on. But we dive right into ego and self-awareness because for us, awareness is the gateway, right? It's the gateway to everything. Like, as you become more aware, you become aware of your patterns, you become aware of your thoughts, you become aware of the created belief systems you have, and it allows you to dive deep inside of yourself. And then in our 4-week, that's a completely tailored program. And so that just depends on where that person is.
Sure.
So that might be way more down, way more into like inner child healing, past life regression, like all sorts of different things that we do there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for explaining that. And then really quickly, because myself just told me to ask what somatic shaking is, because what the f is that?
Okay. So somatic shaking is amazing. Yes.
Somatic. I said semantic. Somatic.
Yeah, either way. So they're getting more into like somatic therapies just in general, basically like natural healing practices to move your bodies. And so for some people, like if you do EMDR or whatever, that's like really moving your eyes and right. So somatic shaking is really just shaking your entire body. It's like getting that energy moving. And so for some people, like even in between sessions, we work with coaches and whatnot ourselves. So sometimes like it's literally just shaking your face, like literally I'm going to shake, right? Or it's like kind of like flapping your hands, right? Shaking, or shaking your whole body. So for us, like after I work out, Tara does the same thing. We try to shake for like a 5-minute span. And so, you just shake all that energy. It's moving all that energy. And while it's doing that, it's also regulating your central nervous system. Yep. And so that all goes hand in hand. So if you're feeling down or if you're having a difficult day, I mean, literally shake it out. When you start to learn how your body works, are natural practices that you can do to bring your body back in alignment.
Yeah. Yes. So I just learned about like regulation and what that is through Dr. Bruce Perry's book and Oprah Winfrey's book, What Happened to You?
That's a good book.
Yes. And how she regulates herself is, I'm pretty sure she goes like on nature walks every Sunday. Like that's her day. And like dancing is something that can regulate your body because it's all about the rhythm kind of. Is that right? Yeah.
Same with singing. This is why. Yes. Singing regulates your vagus nerve too. And so, it all goes hand in hand. Like that's when you think about it though, like, okay, shaking and singing and dancing, we are supposed to be living like our inner child.
I
like,
know.
that we were supposed to do, and we just stopped doing them. So no wonder all these people were all struggling with all sorts of mental illness. We're struggling with sadness, and we're struggling with disease because we're not living how our bodies were designed.
Yep. Exactly. This is wonderful. Okay, so if people want to get connected with you, if they possibly want to take one of your programs, how can people find you?
Sure. So we have our website is www.soulfulhealers.com. You can kind of look at our different packages on there, but we do a free discovery call with every one of our clients to see if we're an aligned fit. And at that point, we kind of go over where they're at, where we're at, what we can do for them, and how we can best serve them. You can also find us on Instagram at We Are Soulful Healers, and on TikTok at Soulful Healers.
Perfect. Okay, so I just have one last question, and you guys have to both answer this individually. Okay. So I'm going to ask Tara first. I'm putting her in the hot seat first.
Okay.
Tara, in your own words, what does the bright side of life mean to you?
Oh, you know what? You know what it means? It means living your life with no regrets. It means living as your authentic self, as the highest version of yourself, embodying everything that you want to be.
Yes. That was a perfect answer. Perfect answer. All right, Kim, you can't take that answer now. So Kim, in your own words.
I would agree with exactly with what Tara said, and then I'll even just add a little bit more. I think it's to start to enter every experience with a new perspective. Instead of looking at an experience, even a difficult experience, as God, this really hurts, or God, this is hard, to look at life and look at that moment as, what is this giving me? Yeah. What am I learning from this moment? Is there an emotion I'm learning that I'm leaning into? Is there something that's creating space for me to develop something bigger and better? It's really to change that perspective and start to look at every little moment in your life as happening for you versus happening to you.
Yeah. And it makes life so much easier when these stressful things that happen to us, or that's kind of, our perspective, but then also, like you said, just becoming aware of it. And it's just amazing the way how my life seems stressful before in certain ways, because I just get easily stressed out. I'm really trying to be mindful of it. And I'm like, why am I stressed about that? Like, that's not that big of a deal. And it's all about changing the mindset, and it's just awesome. Ladies, I cannot thank you guys enough for coming on here to share all of your wonderful stories and all of your knowledge that you have about spiritual work. And if anybody wants to connect with them and get any coaching programs, their information will also be in the show notes, so you can go right there. But do you guys have anything that you want to add before we go?
No, I just thank you so much for having us. And truly, we absolutely believe that everybody is going to embark on their healing journey or spiritual journey in the time that's meant for them. So if you're in that deep, dark place right now, know that it will get better.
Yeah. That's a great thing to end on, because it does happen at any time. Like, it could happen when you're 35 going through a pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like mine.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to end the broadcast episode, or the podcast episode. But for anybody that is still watching on Facebook, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This episode will be on podcast form next Tuesday. So if you guys didn't get to listen to everything, that is when it will be out, and I will do all the fun social stuff. So thank you guys very much, and I will see you next time. I'm going to end our broadcast. Bye.